Part 3 now we continue with, on the bottom portion of the second page of your handout, the nature of the divine peace that is among us. Not something to be achieved, but something rather to be received. It seems to me if we're aware of that it's there, we will receive it. We don't want the headlines to be what they've been in the last few days of shootings and children being killed, pipe bombs, and constant argumentation. Bottom of page 2. The anticipated establishment of peace on earth, indispensable to us in our salvation. Here on earth, we can't keep fighting. Is a precursor. That is, the peace that Jesus is going to establish is really a confirmation of a peace that already exists among people of goodwill, people of faith. It's a precursor to the salvation Jesus established on earth. As such, peace does not belong to the virtuous. There isn't God doesn't change his mind before the cross and after the cross. But the cross is confirmation of what God intended from the beginning. He so loved the world that he set out to save it. The book of Genesis confirms that. As such, peace doesn't belong to the virtuous, but to the world. God gave it to the world, not to a subsection of it, of people who are deemed worthy by virtue of their deeds. In this, the establishment of peace from the beginning of God's intervention into history, peace displays God's glory. This brings God glory that he can save. There's an old saying, any jackass can kick down a barn. It takes a carpenter to build one. We know God as a carpenter, not a jackass. Luke 2:14. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom God favors. So who does God favor? Because among those who God favors is God's peace. That is the proclamation that for us in our salvation, he has sent his Son. Whether you live before that event or after that event, it's all inclusive. Under that view, biblical view, if you're following the discussion, God's favor is linked to God's glory and not to the ethics of any individual. God does not favor you because you're good or better or best. God favors you because you are among those he loves. God's glory. There is no one else in the universe who can do this. God's unique glory resides in God's ability to save what otherwise will be consumed by differences of opinion, and that's all they are. Differences of opinion. Page 3. The exercise of all differences of opinion that end in division is self-righteousness. I'm right. I need to be right. By claiming to be right, people require others to be wrong. Because in that world, you can't both be right. That's the world of duality. One is right, one is wrong, one is good, one is bad. It's very exclusive. They who express their opinions in order to be right and divide irreverently. This is an issue of faith, not freedom. They link God's favor, glory to God in the highest and peace on earth to all whom God favors. They link that favor to righteousness, to being right, rather than to God's grace. God sent his Son out of love, not because we deserved it or even desired it. And because they link it to righteousness rather than God's grace, they believe they have to be right in order to benefit God's favor for themselves. And then the other part of it, those who agree with them. And that's how the world divides up into 125,000 Christian denominations and every other group that these days is divided. Is that biblical? Let's take a look at righteousness. Romans 3:10, as it is written. I give you Old Testament quotations here so that you don't misunderstand that the God of the Old Testament changes his mind and becomes something different in the New Testament. This is consistent character of God, that in the Old and the New Covenants, God behaves in order to save and redeem. That is his glory. In order to ward off self-righteousness, which brings division, notice the scriptures want to make something clear. There is no one who is righteous. Not even one. I don't think we have to do a word study here. I think that's pretty clear. There is no one who has God's understanding. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned aside. Together they've become worthless in that endeavor. They never lose their worth. No one ever loses their worth, no matter what they do. But if you continue to say, I have the mind of God, I am right, you make yourself worth less. There is no one who shows kindness. There is not even one. Isaiah, their feet run to evil. They rush to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Desolation and destruction is in their highways. The way of peace they don't know. And there is no justice in their path. Their roads they've made crooked. No one walks in them who knows peace. And then this text from Genesis. This is before there's any sin in the world, before there's any corruption, any sin, any wrongdoing. This early text gives us a sense of the nature of the relationship between our Creator and us. And it's this: the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall die. What that means is that from the beginning of time, before time even, the relationship God established with the creation was that we would be dependent on God for the knowledge of good and evil. This has nothing to do with our virtue. This has nothing to do with our sinfulness. It has always been so, and it will always be so. So if you and I want to seek the knowledge of good and evil, we need to turn to God.